Great to see everyone this morning. Wish everyone a Chanukah Sameach. We're just hours away until the very first light of Hanukkah, so we're all excited as we're moving into Hanukkah. With that, what I'd like to do today is something special in honor of Hanukkah, and what I'd like to do is share teachings from Rav Kook, and we're going to look at 8 insights, 8 which is an appropriate number. We'll look at 8 insights from Rav Kook, and hopefully these will be a inspiration and a hachana, a nice way to enter Chanukah. And I'll just point out the following. The Rambam, when he speaks about the mitzvah of lighting the Neirot of Chanukah, he writes that there's a mitzvah leharot legalos es hanes, that a person has the obligation leharot, that a person lights the candles, and in that way he presents and he shows leharot, the miracle. It's a way of presenting, a way of celebrating the miracle. But then he uses the term legalot also. What's legalot? Legalot means to reveal the miracle. Rabbi Soloveitchik pointed out, based on this Rambam, that ideally a person should say something, that a person should learn and should talk about the miracle of Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah around the lighting of Hanukkah. That it's not enough just to light the menorah, but one should share divrei Torah, should share insights about Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah, as one lights the menorah. So what we're doing today, hopefully, is a nice preparation. Some of these ideas may be used, if you would like, during the next 8 days of Hanukkah, to share them with others, to speak about them, to share these divrei Torah during Hanukkah, and especially during the lighting of the menorah. Okay, so let's begin. And we're looking at page 1 on the source sheet. Rav Kook addresses the following in this piece, and this is found in Olat Riyah. It's found in his Sidur, the commentary that he has on the Siddur, and in the section of Hanukkah, the lighting and the mitzvah and the bracha of lighting the Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah. And he asks the following question, and that is, why is it that we say Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah? He says, I understand that one would recite that or use the language of a single candle, Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah, on the first night of Hanukkah, but we should really change that language or that term. It should be Lahadlik Neirot Shel Chanukah as you're moving to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all the way up to 8. It's no longer a single candle of Hanukkah or a single light of Hanukkah, but you have many Neirot of Hanukkah. So that's the question that he asks. And what we're going to see here is one of the very beautiful insights of Rav Kook in terms of really what the menorah represents. And he says the following: what are the branches and the lights of the menorah? And I'll just skip down to the 3rd line in the first paragraph that you have on the page. Just a few words in, he says that the lights of the menorah represent or HaTorah, or HaNevuah, or HaChachma, or HaTzedek, or HaGvura, or HaSimcha, or HaChesed, or HaAva Ukiyotze Bo. He says that each one of the lights of the menorah, when we look at the menorah, what are we to think of? Says Rav Kook, we are to think of all the special qualities of Am Yisrael. And we have a number of qualities, many qualities, maybe even within different camps of Am Yisrael, that they have certain excellence or mastery or skill in these areas. There are those that are devoted to Torah study. There are those that are devoted to Gvura. There are communities that are devoted to Simcha. Maybe I think of the Hasidic community, that's an area that they excel in. There are areas or camps within Am Yisrael that are great in Chesed, great in Ava. But the problem is, says Rav Kook, that we see all these different communities or maybe camps within Am Yisrael, we see that they're separate from one another. And he writes, Ach beterem hukra hatachlita elyona shel hachayim, nir'im lanu kol eila ha'orot harabim bepratiyutam ke'ilu heim dvarim nifradim. The problem is, says Rav Kook, is that we see these different communities and the different strengths in Am Yisrael as being that there's a peirud, that there's a separation, that there's a distance between these different communities. And this is one of the very beautiful themes that we have seen and that one finds in the writings of Rav Kook and the thought of Rav Kook, is how is it that we bring Am Yisrael closer together? And how do we learn to appreciate the strengths of every community of Am Yisrael? So he says, when we first look at the menorah, we see that there are all the different branches of Am Yisrael, that we have all these different groups in Am Yisrael and they all seem to be, there's some competitiveness between the different communities. However, that he says is a mistake. That's not really accurate. And let's read on. Let's go to the towards the bottom now. Let's go 5 lines up, in the middle of the line where he writes aval. So what's that? Yeah, 2, 4, 6 lines up, right in the middle of the line. Aval perudim gamken lo yu kayamim laad. But this separateness and even kind of an isolation between the different groups is not something that's going to last forever. Sharei kol zman sheyesh perudei deot ein hakdusha mitbasesed beolam. If you have this separation, and if you do not have appreciation of all the different philosophies and different paths within the Jewish world, if you don't see some of the common denominator between them and to kind of create a harmony, then you cannot have holiness. V'ikar habracha, the essence of blessing, hi habracha, hi birchat shalom. It's the blessing of peace. That's the greatest blessing, where you have peace. Peace within a family, peace within a community, and peace within Am Yisrael. V'hi titkayem be'atid, and this is going to happen in the future. Biyot hakara brura lekol, when we have an insight and when we recognize that the truth is that we're all working together. Kikol ha-me'orot, because all the different lights and we're referring to the lights of menorah, but symbolically the different lights in Am Yisrael, kulam bechol pratiotam hakol hem ner echad. The truth is they're all one candle. Alkein. Therefore, and here Rav Kook is answering the question that he began with, or that we started with, and that is, why do we say lahadlik ner shel Chanukah? Alkein lo neirot nemu bebracha. Therefore, we do not say neirot, many candles, shel Chanukah, shehi nosat de'ah ad hamerchak hayoter niskav, because what we're referring to is a great vision that we have for Am Yisrael, the future vision, maybe a messianic vision. Ad ha'atid hayoter elyon v'neratz be'oz Hashem, a future that is an elevated idea and with the strength of Hashem. Ki'im ner shel Chanukah. We say ner shel Chanukah. So what is Rav Kook's answer? He says something very beautiful, and that is, even when we see the menorah and all the different lights, you know what? It's all really one light. It's one light. They're all connected to one another. We're one people. We're one community. And yes, there are different strengths within Am Yisrael. There are different branches within Am Yisrael. But how do we see all of that working together? Those that are serving the army, those that are learning Torah, those that excel in chesed. Right? You have all the different communities of Am Yisrael. But how, and we must find a way to create a harmony, to create a unity, and therefore the bracha that we recite is not neirot, even when we have many candles, because it's not neirot, it's not separate, even though, yes, there are many branches, but those are branches of one unified whole. That is the insight of Rav Kook and the way that he interprets the bracha that we make every night. So that is, yes, idea number 1, please. There's one stem, exactly right. There's one stem, that they're all attached, that they all come together. Exactly. That's even though it looks like many lights, says Rav Kook, there's one light. It's one great light. We're all sharing the same goal, the same mission of creating a great people. Okay, beautiful. That's idea number 1. Number 2, we're going to look at 8 ideas, 8 insights from Rav Kook. In the bracha, when we say the Amida and when we bench, we're going to say Alanisim, Velapurkan. This evening, if we have sit down to meal, davening Mariv, so we're going to be adding the Alanisim, Alapurkan, Velakvuras, Vatashuos, the Al HaMilchamot, She'asita Lavotenu B'yamim Ahem B'zman Hazeh. Many have asked the question, what does it mean, Al HaMilchamot? We thank God for the wars. We thank God for the battles. Well, that's somewhat difficult to say that we're thanking God for milchama, that we thank God for war. Interesting that in the Sephardic, this is the Ashkenaz version. In the Sephardic version, you can look at it in the Sephardic Siddur. It does not say al ha-milchamot. It says al ha-nechamot. That's what it says. Not milchamot, al ha-nechamot. What's nechamot? The comfort, right? The comfort that Hashem has brought us. Because it's somewhat problematic to say milchamot. Now, the basic understanding is milchamot. What would you say? What do we mean, ala milchamot? That's right. Thank you, God, for helping us, for aiding us in the wars that we won. Okay, that's good. Yeah?
For enabling us not to just accept things.
Okay.
They have to take a stand.
Okay, good. Maybe it means, okay, good. That's an interesting idea as well. Maybe it's taking a stand that we stood up, that milchama. So there are different interpretations of what that means. What is the kavanah? What is the intent of that? So Rav Kook speaks about the following when it comes to milchama. And there's one line that I want to read to you from Rav Kook. He wrote his classic work, Orot, and the very early part of Orot, he has a section called Hamilchama, where he speaks about war. And he speaks about the significance and the spiritual meaning of war. And something that we, many have been learning this section over the last year, the last 14, 15 months, that people have studied what Rav Kook has to say about war. And this is just to take one line, one idea, and this will help us understand or give us another insight into what it means when we say Hamilchamot. So this is the writing of Rav Kook, Hamilchama, from his Sefer Orot, and the opening line where it says Aleph on top, there's a translation below. Kishiyesh milchama gidola be'olam, when there's a great war that is going on in the world, that is happening, mitorer koach Mashiach. With war, and it sounds like a surprising line, there is an awakening of the strength of Mashiach. With war, there is an awakening to Mashiach. Now, what does he mean by that? And one more sentence from Rav Kook. Eit hazamir higia. Now, this is a quote from a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, which means the time of Zamir has come. Now, what does it mean, the time and eight of Zamir? Now, what does the word Zamir mean? So Zamir can mean song. Very good. Zamir means song. Zemer, Zmiros, that we all know. But Zamir has another meaning as well. And Rav Kook is going to speak about both meanings. What's the other meaning? Look at what he writes. Zamir Aritzim. It's a time that we destroy, or here they translate the weeding away of tyrants. Zamir means that is a cutting down. That's another interpretation of the word Zamir. The pruning, very good. We use the word pruning as well. Excellent. Zamir, so it's Zamir Aritzim, that we are cutting down, we are pruning away, we are weeding away the Aritzim, the tyrants of the world. That's what's happening at a time of war. Harisha'im nichadim, the Risha'im, the wicked ones, are being destroyed. Min ha'olam, from the world. V'ha'olam midbasem, and the world is being perfected. The kol hatur, and the sound of the dove, nishma be'artzenu, and we hear the sound, the zamir, and here that references to the song of the bird, of the dove, that can be heard in the land of Israel. So what is it that Rav Kook is referring to? Whenever we have a war, and we can think about possibly the war that we're in, perhaps the war that we're in right now as well. War is the worst thing. Right? It's the most painful. It's a time of great suffering, of great heartache, but it's also a time that there's a great transformation, or the potential of great transformation and light to enter the world. That we're getting closer, says Rav Kook, to a messianic time with a war. And why is that? Because we're destroying evil from this world. We're removing danger and dangerous people from this world, and the danger of terrorists and of countries that are not only a danger to us, but a danger to all of humanity. So it's a time of cutting down, and it's a time of Zamir. As you said, Zamir also means Mirot. It's a time of song. It's a time of celebration. So what is Milchama? And this is another way of understanding what it means when we thank God for Milchama. Milchama means, according to Rav Kook, they were moving a step closer to redemption. Milchama, again, with all the pain and suffering around Milchama is also a step forward, and the right kind of milchama. And this milchama, right, our milchama that we're in right now, destroying evil and bringing the light of the Jewish people and goodness and morality to the world, we're moving closer to a messianic time. So this, says Rav Kook, is how he can interpret, or would interpret, the al hamilchamot, that the milchama of Chanukah and the milchamot that we're in our modern time, that this is a step closer to a messianic time. Okay, good. That's a second idea from Rav Kook. A third idea from Rav Kook. And when we think about Hanukkah is often a time that we think about children. And I know my children are very excited about this evening. School is ending early today throughout Israel as children are making their way home. They're excited about lighting the menorah, about the gifts that they're going to receive, the Hanukkah gelt. So the Gemara has a statement about the menorah and children, which is interesting. look at what the Gemara says. We're on the top of the next page. This is source number 3. It's a Gemara that's found in Shabbos, and it's in the section that speaks about the menorah and lighting the menorah. And this is Daf Chav Gimel, Gemara Shabbos, Amar Rav Huna. You see at the top of the page, Perek Sheni, Bameh Madlikin, Perek Bameh Madlikin, Daf Chav Gimel, Amar Rav Huna. Haragil Bener, Chanukah. Some have, again, the Gemara says, if you regularly light candles, or the candle, and in some girsa, that's in parentheses, is referring to Chanukah candles, Havyan Leibanim Tamidei Chachamim. If you regularly, haragil, light candles, then you'll be zocha, you'll merit to have children who are learned children. Banim Tamidei Chachamim. Rashi says the following. What is that based on? Rashi on the right side. Dichtiv, Pasuk Mishlei, Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or. What is the light referring to? It's referring to the light of mitzvot and Torah. And then Rashi says, Ayidei ner mitzvah de Shabbos, when you light the candles of Shabbos, v'Chanukah, and you light the candles of Chanukah, ba or de Torah. The light of Torah enters that place. That's what Rashi writes. So what does that mean? That if you have candles, if you have the candles of Shabbos, if you have the candles of Chanukah, so then you'll be zocha to children who will be learned, who will be steeped in learning. So this is what Rav Kook writes. Rav Kook has a commentary on the Gemara, Ein Ayah. And here he really picks up on this term haragil. What does ragil mean? It's the same word in English. Regular, ragil, consistency, very good. So he writes the following. This is his interpretation. V'nei harigilut bener, a person who regularly has candles, who has light, po'eled be'adam et hatchuna sheyargish kama tov hu ha'or. A person who always has light in their home, so they appreciate the fact that their home is lit up with light. V'kama kashehi hayeshiva b'choshech. And you feel how difficult it is when there's darkness. You know, when the electricity goes off or there's that blackout and you're sitting there in the dark, and we're used to having light, as we all are. So it's such a uncomfortable experience, like to be sitting there with a candle, with a flashlight, and not having the light that we're used to, that's regular. Masha below hergel, but a person that doesn't have light on a regular basis, lo yargish kol kach. He doesn't really feel that it's that uncomfortable because he doesn't regularly have light. And he sees light as something that's just like an added bonus, right? Not something that you always necessarily have. He doesn't see it as something that is necessary, something that is essential. And says Rav Kook, go to the next paragraph on the left side, Ki ora shel Torah. When we speak about light, and he interprets this Gemara, not really, that it doesn't mean literally the light of the candles of the menorah or of the Chanukiah or Shabbos candles, but whenever we speak about light, and that's what Rashi says, we're talking about the light of Torah that is in one's home. So when a person has that light of Torah, Ki ora shel Torah, Misha hurgal ba v'ne'enem miziva, a person who regularly has it, a person where that's just the very essence of one's home. Like a person that always has light in their home, that they become comfortable with that. It becomes second nature that you have light there. Margish kama hecherichiti. You feel how indispensable it is to have that light, or in this case, to have Torah. The kama hachoshe v'chesron yidiyah ravekashe. And the moment that you don't have that light, you feel pain, right? You feel the discomfort of not having it. Ukefi midat hergel kach tigdal ahava. And the more Torah, and that Torah becomes such part and parcel of your home and the home environment, the more that you feel that, the greater love that one has for it. Vakara shaura hatoriti tchuna atzmit, that it's an essential component. And says Rav Kook the following. Rav Kook says, once a person makes that light an essential component of your home, it's not a secondary thing, that Torah is essential, indispensable to your home, to the experience of the home, then it's going to be transmitted to your children, to the next generation. If Torah is something that you just, every once in a while, it's a part of your life, if it's something that's just like an added bonus, Torah study and Torah, so then maybe it won't, it's not going to be passed on. But that's the way that he understands this Just as the light becomes indispensable, you can't imagine functioning without it. If that's the way that you see Torah, if that's a relationship with Torah, and Torah is something that's indispensable, that is essential to your life and to your home, your children are going to feel that. Your grandchildren are going to feel that. And then that's what the Gemara means. Haragil bener, if that light is something that's regular, that's consistent, that's ongoing, that's indispensable, then it's going to be passed on to your children. Okay, beautiful. So that is a third idea from Rav Kook. We now go to, we're doing 8 in honor of Hanukkah. We go now to the 4th idea from Rav Kook. And this is actually by a student of Rav Kook. We mentioned his name a number of times, Rabbi Charlap. Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap, he lived just a few blocks from here. In Shari Chesed, his base medrash is here. We've quoted from his teachings. And he's interested in the following issue, and that is, where is the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles, of lighting, or the oil of Hanukkah? Where is the mitzvah? So the Gemara says it's ner ish ubeso, which means that it's something that's done in the home, which is not necessarily the case for other mitzvot. Other mitzvot you can do wherever you may be, right? Putting on tefillin, it's wherever you are. I just came back the other day on a flight, sitting in my chair on El Al, putting on, not easy to do that, putting on tefillin, davening in that place, but it's a mitzvah anywhere. But when it comes to Hanukkah candles or Hanukkah lights, the menorah, the Chanukiah, so it's ner ish ubeso, that it's done in the house. Why is it the house in particular? Why was it in that place that Chazal said that's the place, the appropriate place? And as we know, people have different minhagim. Some do it in the window, some do it in the front of the home, but it's connected to the house. It needs to be done at the house. That's what the halacha says. That's what the Gemara says. So this is what Rabbi Charlap answers. He gives a very beautiful answer. And he says, and we can read it here. This is number 4, the right side. Umikitvei Maran Hagaon Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap Zatzal Ne'emar. It said in his name, Neirot Chanukah hem zecher leminorat Beit HaMikdash. What is the menorah that we light, or we sometimes call the Chanukiah here in Israel? What do we light? We're lighting a menorah or a Chanukiah that is a symbol that reminds us of the menorah that was in the Beit HaMikdash. Upa'alo az HaKohanim, and the purpose of the Kohanim, what were they doing? What they were doing is HaKohanim HaKdoshim lahalot et kol Yisrael lemadregat Kohanim. That everybody should feel when they're in that place that they're lifted, that they're uplifted to feel like they're Kohanim as well, that we're uplifted spiritually. Shetiyeh gam ha-menorah shebepetach kol beit bayit b'Yisrael, that every menorah that's at the entrance of every house in the Jewish people, b'chol makom shehu, wherever they are, ki menorat beit hamikdash. You should look at your menorah, says Rabbi Charlap, as if you're lighting the menorah of the Beit HaMikdash. V'chol echad mi-Yisrael ha'omed u'madlik et hanerot, and everyone who's lighting, harehu kikohen. You should think of yourself like you are a Kohen. These 8 nights, that you are acting like a Kohen, hamadlik et hanerot hakodesh bebeit mikdasho, and you're lighting in your Beit HaMikdash. That every home is a miniature Beit HaMikdash. Why is the halacha of menorah in a bayit? Because just like it was in the Beit HaMikdash, that's your Beit HaMikdash, your miniature Beit HaMikdash. You know, there's a beautiful Rashi that speaks about Yitzchak and Rivka when they meet for the very first time. And Yitzchak brings Rivka into his tent. So it says the following, this Rashi, you may remember this Rashi. It says that he brings Rivka into the ohel of Sarah Imo. And I'm going to read to you the Rashi. It's the source right below. Vayivieha ha'ohela, and he brought her into the tent. Varehi Sarah Imo, and behold, she was like Sarah. That Rivka, when Yitzchak married Rivka, he saw in the face of Rivka his mother. That's what Rashi says. Klomar v'nased dugmat Sarat Imo. She became like the image of Sarah, his mother. And here Rashi says the following: Shekol zman shesarah kayemet. During the lifetime of Sarah, haya ner daluk, that there was a lamp that was always lit, me'erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos, from week to week, ubracha mitzuya be'isa, and there was blessing found in the dough, ve'anan kashur al ha'ohel, and there was a cloud that was stationed over the tent. But once she died, umisha mesa pasku, they all stopped. Ukesheba Rivka, but when Rivka entered the home or the tent of Yitzchak, chazru. They all returned. Not sure if you remember, it's a very beautiful description of what it was like when Rivka entered the tent or the home of Yitzchak, that all these miracles came back, the miracles that were there when Sarah was there. And many point out, what were the three things that happened in the house? That there was a ner that was daluk. What is that ner? Like this bayit, like the Beit HaMikdash, that has the ner Chanukah, that has the menorah, and you have the isa, you have the dough. What is that? What is that symbolic of? The bread that was there from week to week? That's right, like the shulchan that had the breads, the lechem apanim in the Beit HaMikdash. And it says that you had the anan kashur la'oel, and you had a cloud that was stationed over the tent. What is that reminiscent of? Either the Shekhinah or the Ketoret itself, or that it says that was like a cloud, the Ketoret, the smoke of the Ketoret that went up from the spices. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. But this is referring to, again, one of the interpretations is the idea that the home is like the Beit HaMikdash. It's a miniature Beit HaMikdash. So according to Rabbi Charlap, the student of Rav Kook, what is that we are doing? Why is the mitzvah in the home in particular? We should think of our home like a Beit HaMikdash as well. A miniature, a place of sanctity. A place just like the Beit HaMikdash, where the Shekhinah resides, so too, that is the Jewish home. And I'll just share one other idea, which is interesting, just in terms of the Beit HaMikdash and being reminiscent of the Beit HaMikdash. So one of the minhagim that we have, and this is something that we're all familiar with, is eating a sufganiyot. So when I grew up, I did not hear of sufganiyot. In America, I grew up in Long Island. I knew about latkes, right? That we eat latkes. I really didn't grow up. Did people grow up on having donuts and having jelly donuts? I didn't grow up with it. I came to Israel the last 10, 20 years, so we all know sufganiyot. But I don't know, it wasn't something that I grew up with. So I always thought coming to Israel, that was kind of like something that they created here, maybe in Machane Yehuda, in the Shuk, that somebody kind of came up with this idea of the jelly donuts. But I did some research, and where do we find it for the very first time, the mention of sufganiyot? So the Rambam's father, we all know the Rambam, but the Rambam's father, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, so he was also a great Talmid Chacham. And we have writings from Rav Maimon as well, the father of the Rambam. And in his writings, we have one of the writings, he says that one should be very careful to keep up all the minhagim of the Jewish people. And I don't have the source in front of me or in front of you, but I just have it here. He says that we should do la'asot sufganin, that we should have the sufganiyot on Chanukah, and he calls it a minhag hakadmonim, that this is an ancient minhag. So we're talking about the Rambam's father, going back 900 years, and that the Rambam's father is saying, make sure to keep this minhag of having sufganiyot on Chanukah. So we're talking about 1,000 years, it's at least 1,000-year-old minhag of having sufganiyot. And I'll add one other thing. Why did they come up with this idea of sufganiyot? Like, where did this come from, of all things? Now, we know that it kind of, represents the oil, that it's fried in oil, that it soaks up the oil, and it's reminiscent of the oil of nes with the pach shemen. But why, of all things, sufganiyah? Like, why that? You could have pizza that has a lot of oil, and that could be the minhag. So I found the following. I haven't really seen this written anywhere, but I can't imagine that it's not part of this, part of the explanation. The Gemara says the following: in Menachos, this is Peichas Amud Beis. It says every morning that they would clean the menorah. In other words, you had the light of menorah that lasted all night long. The next morning they would clean the menorah. There was the ashes, there was the soot from the lighting of the oil and the the wick that was there. So it says the following. I'm reading to you just two words from the Gemara. Umekanchan. And how would they clean it? Bisvog. They would clean it with a svog. Now, what is a svog? A sponge. What's a sufganiyah? Is a sponge. That's correct. A sufganiyah is a sponge. It's a sponge that soaks up oil. They used a sponge every day in the Beit HaMikdash with the menorah to prepare every morning the lighting of menorah with a sponge. So it's not by chance that somebody came up with the idea, again, going back at least 1,000 years to the Rambam's father, who said that there's a minhag that's a old minhag going back hundreds of years, that somebody said, you know what, on Hanukkah, we're going to light the menorah, we're going to have a Chanukiah, but let's also have a sponge that looks like the sponge that was used to clean the menorah every day, to remember as a zecher to the menorah, how they prepare the menorah every morning. So that's quite amazing. So when you hold that sponge, that sufganiyah, in your hand, you should have in mind not only that this is very tasty and delicious and that it's soaked in oil, but it is that, or it's reminiscent, it's symbolic of the sponge that was used in the Beit HaMikdash by the Kohanim every day to prepare the menorah for the lighting. Okay, so again, we have the menorah that's in the bayit, and we do it in our house to remember the Beit HaMikdash, and our home is like a Beit HaMikdash, and the sponge that we use can also, or again, the sufganiyah that we're eating, that we can think about this sponge that was used in the Beit HaMikdash as well. Beautiful. All right, we go to number 5, and here's the question. The question is the following. Yes, please. So what I just told you, I don't have on the page. I'm sorry, no, I don't have, but again, the source, if you want to look it up, it's 88b in Menachos, Pechet Amabez, which has the Mekanchim Bisfog, that's how they clean the menorah every day. Okay, good. Now we go to the 5th idea from Rav Kook about Chanukah. So one of the interesting questions about Chanukah, I'm not sure if you've ever thought about this question, but one of the interesting questions, it's found in the halacha, is why we do not have the mitzvah of Suda, of having a meal on Chanukah. Now we always have a Suda. On Shabbos, there's an obligation to have 3 meals. On Yantif, we have an obligation of meals. On Purim, we have the obligation of Suda. Chanukah is very strange that we do not have, there's no obligation of a Suda, of having a meal. Anybody know why not? Because you're too full from the sufganiyah. It could be. All right. So let's see the way nobody. I mean, not no one. There are different interpretations. Rav Kook gives the following interpretation why we do not have a meal on Chanukah. So let's begin here. So this is source number 5, and here in the Torah itself, it speaks about the lighting of the menorah, the beginning of Bahalotcha, Parshat Bahalotcha. Famously, Bahalotcha is a reference. He'alah, the candles, that the light, not candles, but the oil, are that they're lit and that they go upward. The pasuk says, "Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, daber el Aharon ve'amarta elav b'ha'alotcha et hanerot." When you light the menorah, el mul penei menorah, at the front of the menorah, ya'iru shivat hanerot, that you have 7 lights of the menorah. Ya'iru shivat hanerot. As we know, right, our menorah or Chanukiah, that's why they call it a Chanukiah, that it's not the menorah, that we have 8 for the 8 days of Hanukkah, but the original menorah was 7, right? As the pasuk says, Shivat HaNerot. You had 1 in the center, and you had 3 on either side. So what does that represent? The Rabbi of Rav Kook, his name was the Netziv of Volozhin, and he has a famous commentary, the Ameg Davar, and he writes the following. What is Ya'iru Shivat HaNerot? What do they represent, these 7 lights? Mishum shebetor shval ped nichlal sheva chachmot. He says that the 7 lights represent 7 branches of wisdom. We have Torah wisdom, but then we have general wisdom as well. Shebeli yediyah b'chol hachachmot, without having all the wisdom, the different wisdoms of the worldly wisdoms, i'efshar lavod lekame karei Torah. You would not be able to understand many essential parts of Torah, kamo shi'urei kilayim ve'uktzin v'kiddush hachodesh ve'od harbe inyanei shi'urim. It would be very difficult to understand kilayim, things that relate to agriculture and mixing of different, of grafting. And he says Kiddush HaChodesh, which is really a lot of mathematical issues. So how would we know those things without secular knowledge, right? Without other wisdom? We can find a lot in the Torah, but also all the wisdom of the world is necessary to understand. That's what the Netziv writes, in order to understand Torah. V'chol hachachmot ba'u l'shamesh u'leva'er hazarot Torah shebichtav. In other words, all of the different wisdoms come to enlighten us. And that's what the 7 candles represent, what the 7 lights represent. It represents all different areas of Chachma. Now, one other pasuk, there is a pasuk that's found early on in the Torah, which I don't have in front of you. And this is the bracha that Noah gives to his children, Yefet and Shem. And he says, Yaft Elokim liyefet v'yishkon ba'alei Shem. Again, you don't have that pasuk in front of you, but the way that that's interpreted is Yaft Elokim liyefet, according to Gemara Megillah, that refers to Greek wisdom, that vayishkon ba'alei shem, that it has a place in the ohel of shame. And shame represents the very beginnings, the very foundation of the Jewish people. Meaning there is wisdom, there is Greek wisdom as well, and it has a place that it's brought into the ohel of shame. It's brought into the tent of the Jewish people, so to speak. So here we have, on the one hand, we have our Torah, but we also have the great wisdoms and insights of the world. And we bring some of that in, but the question is how much of that, and what do we allow in, and what do we not allow into our tents, into the community of OUisrael. So here Rav Kook writes the following, and this is going again, now we're going to address the question, why is Seudah, why is having a Seudah not part of Hanukkah? Here we go. The last paragraph on the page, this is from Rav Kook, and in his commentary of Einaya, U'be'emet, nikva'a hasimcha, when it came to establishing the role of simcha, of joy on Hanukkah, b'mei Hanukkah, bitsura se'ifit. The rabbis were very particular, or they were very limited, or they wanted to limit what we mean by simcha, joy, on the holiday of Hanukkah, lehorot, in order to teach, she'ena re'uya litpashet al kol hayesod shel simchat elu hayamim, that we are not to bring all of the joy, and here he's referring to the joy or the way that the Greeks would celebrate, and not to bring that into Hanukkah. There are certain parts that we are to bring in from Greek culture, from secular culture, but certain things that are not allowed in. Lahagain, and just one more line from Rav Kook, lahagain bifnei hatoim, in order to protect or to guard from those who would be mistaken, lahashrish, to allow to take root, rucha shel Yavan, the spirit of Yavan, the way or the culture of Yavan, of the Greeks, hachomri, that's very physical, bekerem Yisrael, into the vineyard of Israel, of the Jewish people. According to Rav Kook, why do we not have a Seudah, a mitzvah Seudah? Because were we to have a Seudah, one might be mistaken to think that we've taken that aspect of Greek culture. And they put great emphasis on their meals, on hedonism, on the aesthetics of beauty, right? That was their contribution. Now, there may be a place for some of that, but there is not a place, says Rav Kook, the idea of the gluttony and the hedonism that's found in their culture, to bring that into our way of celebrating and our Jewish life. And we want to, I'll take your question in a moment, and we wanted to make that distinction very clear. Therefore, again, this is a unique, very novel way of interpreting why there is not a mitzvah of Seudah. Were we to have a Seudah, we would think, okay, that's also part of that culture or that aspect of Greek culture we can bring into our celebration. Says Rav Kook, the rabbis, Chazal, wanted to make it very clear, there's no place for that within Jewish celebration, within our Jewish life. We have our way of doing it, but not the Greek way of doing it. Yes, please.
So my question is during the time of the Greeks,
Yes.
we still had Pesach and Shavuos and so on.
Yes.
So we had Seudah.
We had Seudah on those holidays, but now when that, yes, absolutely. We had our Seudah, and we do that in a particular way. But when Chazal wanted to establish Hanukkah, they asked the question, well, if we're going to bring in certain things from Greek culture, and it's going to appear that we're taking some of those aspects of Greek culture to bring it into our Hanukkah celebration, some would be mistaken and say, okay, that's also something that we can adopt from the secular world.
Would Hanukkah be the only holiday that was established during the Greek time?
Yes, absolutely, yes. It's the last holiday, it's the final holiday that is established by Chazal until modern day holidays of, again, that's a whole question in terms of Yom Ha'atzmaut, but it's the last of the holidays that are incorporated. And the question was how to incorporate the holiday. What will be the halachot of the holiday? What are going to be the rituals of the holiday? Say that one more time.
It's more or less follows the Shita Beishma.
Meaning? Yeah, in what way?
To light one candle at the end.
Okay, I'm not sure how that relates to. Not sure how the Shammai opinion relates to this discussion. I'm not sure. Yes, please. Yeah.
and Christmas. Because Christmas is very big, the Christmas meal or whatever you call it, I
Yeah.
don't know. That, because Hanukkah and Christmas come, especially today, it's the same day
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in the Roman time, they always talk about the Christmas something or another, big Christmas meal, Christmas dinner,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay. Could
So
be.
if you like fast forward to the Roman period.
Yes, please.
And also presents. That in America, we
Right.
never got a present when we were growing
You
up.
never got presents,
We
yeah.
got gifts.
Very good. Very good. No, I was thinking about this. Yes, I was thinking about the same issue, and I think that is a question. It's something that Rav Kook is highlighting. In other words, what is it that is acceptable that we can bring in from other cultures around us, and what are things that that are unacceptable in a Jewish practice and a Jewish way of life? Yes, please. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Sudot are yes, you're okay. I no, it's a good question. Sudot, and that is the question. Why, when it comes to Hanukkah, the question is Sudot is always a way that we celebrate. It's the way we celebrate Shabbos, the way we celebrate a Yontif. It's the way we celebrate Purim. Why did the rabbis Chazal, when it came to Hanukkah, did they say we're not doing Suda? That there's now. By the way, I will just point out the Shulchan Aruch writes that there's no mitzvah of Suda. The Ramah also. By the way, when you think of Hanukkah, do you think of sitting down to a Suda, of having a meal? Of having challah? No, we don't do that. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserlis, he writes that if you make a Suda on Hanukkah and you share Divrei Torah and you sing, so then it becomes a Sudat mitzvah. That's what he writes. In other words, you can make a Suda and you can kind of turn it into Sudat mitzvah on Hanukkah, but everyone agrees that there's not an obligation of Suda. Now, why is this the only exception, the exception to the rule that Hanukkah does not have a Suda? There are different interpretations, but this is Rav Kook's idea. This is Rav Kook's suggestion. Yes, please. Okay, okay. It could be that's not ideal. I don't know. That's a good question. But the intrusion, or that we've adopted this idea of gift giving, which probably is not. It's probably not our. It's not. It seems that you have minhagim of giving gelt, which seem to be related to Talmud Torah, and it was a way of encouraging children to study or maybe to stay. It's not even clear, like the whole gelt giving, and it was always gelt, right? It was giving money. It was not gift giving. It seems that the gift giving we've adopted from others around us. Yes.
I think as Jews, and most of us came from another country, you have to sort of draw the line
Yes.
between theirs and ours.
Very good.
It's Christmas Eve. I think we have to be very careful.
Very good.
To do what we're doing and just to ignore them.
Very good. So according to Rav Kook, this is where he believes that Chazal, the sages, wanted to draw a line. That was something that was a major part of Greek culture, of Greek society, the kind of eating, the kind of meals that they had, and we were not going to bring that into Hanukkah. That's his interpretation. I think it's unique. It's not the typical way of looking at it, but that's the way that Rav Kook suggests. His suggestion why we do not have a Suda on Hanukkah. Interesting. Okay.
What does Surah mean in here? In
Yes. Which word? Oh, seifit. Seifit is like the word seif, like a seif in a Shulchan Aruch. It means something that's particular, like something that's condensed, particular or condensed, curtailed, limited. Seifit. Seifit.
what's condensed here?
What's condensed is the simcha, is the joy of Hanukkah. In other words, it's something that's particular. In other words, that we're going to express it in a certain way, that there is simcha. We're going to through Hallel and Hodah, that with the lighting of menorah, that we're going to express it that way, but it's a limited expression. In other words, we're not going to express it in the typical way with a Suda as well. It's a more curtailed simcha on Hanukkah. That's the way that Rav Kook has it. All right, let's move on. Let's get to. We only have 10 minutes. Let's get the last three teachings in. Number six. So Rav Kook, I think it was the year 1916, 1917, maybe both those years, there was a calendar that was being published here in Israel, and they asked Rav Kook if he would write like a little phrase or a little motto for each month. And they published this calendar, and every month has a one-liner from Rav Kook. They put it together in a sefer called Meged Yerachim, and it's the top of page 6. This is what he wrote, 1916, for the month of Kislev. And the question is, what does he mean by this? This was his Chanukah idea, his Chanukah teaching. Habarak ha'eloki, which is a godly or a divine bolt, shebenishmat ha'chashmonaim, that's found in the soul of the Chashmonaim, nitpotzetz leditzotzot, that it was splintered into sparks. Kisheyitbitzu la'avuka achat, when it comes together, when it's gathered together in one torch, yashuv lehigalot, it will return and be revealed. Yashuv lehigalot, it will return and be revealed. Okay, not easy. This is what does Rav Kook mean by this? What does he want to express? So there are different ways of interpreting this. There are a number of svarim actually that deal with understanding these pitgamim, these mottos of Rav Kook. So one way of interpreting what Rav Kook means here is the following. Who were the Chashmonaim? The Chashmonaim were the Kohanim. The Kohanim are people of great spirituality. The Kohanim, of course, we think about the Kohanim, the Beit HaMikdash, but they were also people who were the Chashmonaim, the Maccabim. They were the ones that went to battle. We don't always think about that the Kohanim were the people that also went to battle. They were the ones that were victorious over the Yevanim. So this is the sparks. These are the different aspects and the light of these individuals. The sparks mean that they had different strengths. Now, when we gather them again, when we bring those strengths together, yashuv lehigalot, they will be revealed. What is he referring to? He's referring to, and again, similar to how we started, that there are different aspects, different strengths within Am Yisrael. There are those that have great spiritual strength, those that have great physical might, and to recognize that those come together, that there's a unity, that those merge together. And when they merge together, then we have the greatness of Am Yisrael. And I was thinking about this idea of Hesder Yeshivot. There was an article that was written by Rabbi Lichtenstein a number of years ago in the 70s in Tradition magazine. It was called The Ideology of Hesder. And in that, he defends or he teaches what it means to be a student of Torah. And a student of Torah is also a student that is defending Am Yisrael. That these two qualities and this spirit and these sparks, that they come together, and when they come together, that's the greatness of the Jewish people. So I think this is one way of interpreting what Rav Kook is referring to, that we have in the Chashmonaim, the Maccabim, the Kohanim, that we have these sparks, that we have these great abilities, what they bring to Am Yisrael, how they bring it together. And says Rav Kook, when we appreciate all of these different talents and qualities, and that they're all holy within Am Yisrael, then Yashuv lehigalot. Then you have a great revelation of the power of Am Yisrael. Okay, good. So that's the fusion of the spiritual and the physical might of Am Yisrael, which, of course, Rav Kook is seeing the potential of that coming together as Am Yisrael returns to the land of Israel. Number seven, and this the Gemara says, is when we had the holiday of Hanukkah. We waited an entire year, says the Gemara, until they established the holiday. Look at the language of the Gemara. This is the Gemara Daf Chaf Aleph. V'lo hayabo ela lalik yom echad. So this picks it up in the Gemara where they found the oil. There was only enough oil for a single day. Naseh bones. There was a great miracle. V'idliku mimenu shmona yamim. It lasted for 8 days. Says the Gemara, L'shana acheret kav'um ve'asum yamim tavim b'halal v'hoda. They waited a year until they established the holiday. And many of the commentaries ask the question, why did they wait so long? It's not that long, but why didn't they establish the holiday? Once they saw the miracle and they saw the hand of Hashem, they should have established it right away. The Gemara makes this point that they waited, L'shana acheret. A whole year went by before they established the holiday. Okay, Rav Kook says the following. Why do they wait a year? It's to teach the following point. And here we have one line from Rav Kook. This is also found in his Einayah. Ki od lo afsa hamilchama. Because the war did not come to a close. Ki lo afsa milchama. And what does he mean by that? We'll see in a moment. Shel hitnasut hitgabrut haruach hayevani. That the ruach, that the spirit of the Greek spirit and the Greek teachings is something that went on and on, even beyond the days of Hanukkah. Ushel olam tzarich koach Hashem aprimi. The Jewish people are going to need the strength of this inner oil, the purity of Am Yisrael. Shebo ein magaz zarim shalet. That there's no way that the influence of the Greeks can touch that place. Liot magin al kain kavum. That it'll always be protected, this aspect of the Jewish people. What does Rav Kook say? He says the following, that for other holidays, we celebrate, let's say, Yitzias Mitzrayim. It came to a close. We got out of Egypt. The Jewish people survived. There was the Exodus. End of story. But when it comes to the story of the Greeks and their influence on Am Yisrael, that story continues on and on. Now, it's something that is, and I was just in America the last 10 days and thinking about the Greek culture and to think about Greek influence. So that's something that, and Rav Kook says it here, it's something that continues beyond the Hanukkah story. That it's something that Jews and the Jewish people will contend with for a very long time. And therefore, symbolically, they did not make Hanukkah right away. They waited because the story of Hanukkah is not over and it did not end with the lights of the menorah, and it didn't end with the battles where we were victorious, because that influence is an influence that we are still struggling with today. And we were just bringing that up just a few moments ago. The culture around us and many of the, what we would call Greek influences are still very much part of Western culture. And the Jew needs to hold fast to that, as Rav Kook says, to that, the koach hashemen haprimi, that inner pure oil that needs to offset, that needs to stand firm, to stand up against that those influences. Yes. Very good, very good. Yeah, very nice. The miracles of that time, ubizman hazeh, and today. We need those miracles today, and we also need, as you were pointing out very beautifully, the influence, right? That impact is still something that we are contending with in our society, in Western culture, in America and in Israel today. Okay, beautiful. So let's go to one last teaching, the 8th teaching that we have from Rav Kook. And here he raises the following question. Now, when the Jews entered the Beit HaMikdash, we know that they found the Pach Shemen. All of the oil was destroyed. Miraculously, they found that one jug of oil. Some say that also was a miracle, that they found that jug of oil. And they lit the menorah. Now, what menorah did they light? I think for many of us, we're under the impression that they lit the menorah. The menorah was there. They lit the beautiful golden menorah. But the Gemara and other sources say the menorah was not there. They destroyed everything, right? They destroyed the Pach Shemen. You think that they left the menorah, that the menorah was there? So what did they light? So the Gemara says that they actually took, one opinion is that they took the spears that they had and they fashioned the menorah out of the spears, and with that was the menorah. Again, I don't think that's the way we usually think about the lighting menorah. We think about the beautiful menorah, that they lit the menorah. But the Gemara says that the menorah was not present, that they had to make a menorah. They had to fashion a menorah. So Rav Kook says, the question that he asks is, why is it that the miracle was only a miracle of the oil? And why didn't Hashem provide a miracle around the menorah as well? I don't know, maybe that they would find the menorah, maybe a miraculous menorah would appear. But that's the question that he asked, which is interesting. Let's look at the language of Rav Kook. So this is actually from a sefer called Shmuot Ra'aya. These were talks that Rav Kook gave at Shalashudas. These were well-known gatherings in his home where he had all different people from different walks of life. They would come and sit with him at Shalashudas where he would teach. And this is one of the teachings that he gave at Shalashudas over Hanukkah. And he writes the following, Ela sheyesh li torer. He says, you can ask the following question, Lama naaseh hanes b'shemen b'shvil hidur, that the miracle was with the oil, u'b'menorah lo naaseh lahem nes. But there was no miracle around the menorah itself. shetimtza b'shvil hidur, that they didn't find the menorah where they would have the hidur mitzvah, the beautiful mitzvah of lighting with the menorah itself. Shamrei amrinan hasab. It says in the Gemara, the malchei beis chashmonai asu ota, that they made the menorah mishipudim shel barzel, that they took the spears that they used in the war, and they built a menorah. They made a menorah on the spot. Ulachad manda amar, and one opinion says me'etz, that they made a wooden menorah. So the Gemara says that the menorah was not there, that they had a fashion menorah, either out of spears, or they took some wood, and they built on the spot. They built a menorah, and that's the menorah that they used for, that became the miraculous, with the miraculous oil. But Rav Kook says, why is it the miracle happened with the oil, and there's no miracle with the menorah itself? So this is the answer that he gives, a more spiritual answer. We'll see this really touches on one of the main teachings of Rav Kook. Omnam, Yisod Hanes de Chanukah, that the very essence or the foundation of the miracle, Naaseh Leodia Sigulat Ruach HaKodesh HaShorah B'Yisrael, is to teach us the holiness that's found within the spirit of Am Yisrael. Shehu Mikayem et HaChomriyut, and that uplifts the physical part of Am Yisrael, Ve'enu Talui Ba, and it's not contingent, it doesn't rely on the physical part or the physical makeup of Am Yisrael. V'zeh ein bekoach shum ruach v'tarbut shel chol, and there's no way that any other culture or any other people can blot out that special spirit of Am Yisrael. So Rav Kook says the following. Rav Kook says, what does it represent? It represents the spirit of Am Yisrael. And even though the physical makeup of Am Yisrael, and that's the menorah, even though that was not ideal, that didn't have hidur, that didn't have beauty, but the beauty itself of the very essence, and that's the oil, that there was holiness in that. Now, what is Rav Kook referring to? What does Rav Kook mean by that? The way that I understand Rav Kook, and I think it's brought here as well, that this is one of the major questions that was being addressed in Rav Kook's life and in his lifetime. And that is that the Jews that were returning to the land of Israel and were building this country, they were not religious Jews. Many of them were anti-religious. And people were saying to Rav Kook, well, how do you see this as a great moment in Jewish history when you have people that don't believe in Hashem, that are not keeping Shabbos, not keeping kosher, and they're building the nation, they're building this land? How do we see that as something that's holy? How do we see that as something that is the hand of God? And Rav Kook said, okay, it may be true that they do not have holiness, even though he also argues for their holiness. Maybe it doesn't appear that they have holiness, but the fact that there is holiness in Am Yisrael, that at the core of our nation, and he would say at the core of every Jew that's coming back, is really a love for the land and love for the people. That's the holiness of the oil, that ultimately will bring holiness to this enterprise of building the land of Israel. He gave a famous mashal. He said that when the Mishkan was being built, the Kodesh Kadashim, we know the Kodesh Kadashim, who can enter the Kodesh Kadashim, the Holy of Holies? There's only one person, the Kohen Gadol, can enter on Yom Kippur at the holiest time. But when they were building the Kodesh Kadashim and building the Mishkan, who was inside the Kodesh Kadashim? What? Just everyone. Whoever it was that was assigned to build it, whoever was there who was assigned to building it. They were inside the Kodesh Kadashim. So he said that's true of Am Yisrael as we're returning to the land. They are building this nation. Okay, they're not the Kohen, they're not the Kohen Gadol, they're not the Kohanim, but they're building it. Ultimately, there's going to be holiness that's going to be infused. It's just a matter of time. And here Rav Kook says that's the oil. The oil represents the very essence of Am Yisrael, the very essence of a Jew. Okay, the menorah doesn't have that hidur. It's not necessary. I mean, that it'll come around. We'll be able, at this point, we take the metal spears and we build a menorah. We take some wood and we build a menorah. But the fact it's the oil itself, that's the very essence, and ultimately that's going to be the defining feature, defining character of our nation, and it'll be sanctified. Rav Kook believed that. He believed it's just a matter of time. As we come back to Israel, the Jewish nation settle in Israel, we're going to sanctify the nation and the land of Israel. Yes, quickly, you take a, yes.
Today's my father's words that he was a Kohen. He was a very, very religious man. And I had one uncle on, he was in the Shafet that was an atheist. And my father's quote was, know who is more religious, myself or my brother-in-law. I keep Taryag mitzvot, but he built the land of Israel with his
Beautiful,
hands.
beautiful,
And that's what he said.
beautiful, beautiful. One more comment and then we'll just close. Yes,
Yeah, but he says in our Nissim,
yes,
nothing about the oil at all.
yes.
It's just about the victory.
That's true.
Of the battle.
Very good, very good. Good point. Okay, I'll just,
What about dairy?
I'll end. Well, he doesn't say it.
What happened to dairy?
Yeah, dairy. Yeah, there's a minhag of having dairy based on Yehudit, and that's no. I didn't find anything in Rav Kook about that in particular. Not that I know of. One last comment. We'll end with this. So somebody asked Rav Kook, who is on the highest level of the spiritual ladder? That's the question. Who, and like you just addressed the question, who's on the highest level of the spiritual ladder? So Rav Kook says, it depends on which direction you are moving on the ladder. You could be at a very low place on the ladder, but if you're moving upward, then you're moving in a holy direction. That person is very holy. You could be in a very high place, but if you're not going upward, if you're moving down, so you're not such a holy person. So it's a question. The question is just simply, in which direction are we moving? Are we moving upward, little by little? And that, he says, is what Hillel says about the lighting menorah, malin b'kodesh ve'moridin, that a Jew is always to move step by step, little by little, that we're moving closer and closer to Hashem, to our Avodat Hashem. And with that, we'll close. I want to just wish everyone a Chanukah Sameach. Everyone should have a wonderful Chanukah. We should all be blessed that it should be a time of joy, a time of simcha, a time of nisim, of miracles. We pray that we should have, that our milchama should be a milchama that will bring us closer, as Rav Kook says, closer to Mashiach, and closer to a time of the ultimate redemption of Geula Shlema. Chanukah Sameach, everyone.